Where's the pool? Oh, okay.
I'm trying to project my voice in a different direction because my wife told me that everybody heard it yesterday. So I'm just moved sideways. This way, hopefully no one it won't project it into the house. Okay, so we are 3 lines from the bottom. Rabbi Yehuda Hindua was a ger she'ein lo yorshim. What's unique about a ger that has no yorshim, a ger normally does not have yorshim, is that if he dies, there's no one that's automatically kinda the assets. Really, they become up for grabs because they become ownerless. So Rabbi Yehuda Hindua was one such person, died, or he was weak, he was dying, and Mar Zutra was afraid that his avodim would go free as soon as he would die, and Mar Zutra did not want that to happen. So all Mar Zutra l'shiyula bey, Mar Zutra went to visit him. He saw that Rabbi Yehuda Hindua took a turn to the worse. He was not doing well. So Omer Le'Lavdei, he told the Eved of Rabbi Yehuda Hindua, Shloifli Misnoi, take off my shoes, Vamtinu Levesa, carry them to my house. So what he was trying to do was make sure that while the Adai died, while Rabbi Yehuda Hindua died, the Eved should be in the process, in the act of actually doing malacha on behalf of Mar Zutra, which would be a chazaka for Mar Zutra. This way, he will go straight from the rishus of Rabbi Yehuda Hindua into the rishus of Mar Zutra. There's one nusach of this story that this Eved was an adult. An adult, technically, would have been able to be kind of himself the moment his other died, because an adult can make kinyanim. Turning on to the Amud Aleph. So Zeh Pirish Lamisa, Zeh Pirish L'chaim. And therefore, there was a seamless transition. Rabbi Yehuda Hindua died, and the Eved went straight to Mar Zutra, who was Pirish L'chaim. The Yid Amri, Katan Haba. There are those who say that this Eved was a Katan. Now, if he was a Katan, and you hold that a Katan is not able to be kind to himself, so there was really no rush to do this, because he could have just waited till after Rabbi Yehuda Hindua died, and then he could have made the chazaka on this small Eved. So why did he feel the need to have to make the chazaka right away? Because he didn't hold like Abba Shol. Abba Shol is the one who says that a cotton cannot be kind to himself, and he remains ownerless, and therefore there was no reason to rush to be kind to this Eved. But Mar Zutra did not pass him like Abba Shol, and therefore he wanted to make the kinyan right away. The Tanya, because we learned in the Brisa, Ger Shemes, Ubizbizu, Yisrael Nechos. A ger died, and of course Yidden went to raid his Nechosim to be kind. And amongst the Nechosim were Avodim. Ben Gedolim and Ben Ketanim. It doesn't really matter if they're adults or not, or children. Kanu Atzmon B'nei Chayrin. They're automatically kind themselves. According to this Shita, of course Mar Zutra had to make a chazaka in these Avodim, or seamlessly death of Yehuda Hindua. But Abba Sholainer, Gedolim Kanu Atzmon B'nei Chayrin, but Ketanim Kalamachsk Ben Zacha because they cannot be kind of themselves. And therefore, there would have been no reason for Mar Zutra to rush. Let's see Rashi. With the Loik Abashol, the Omar Kala Machzik Ben Zacha, Afilu Lachazman, Zacha Ben. Now, Tosfos has multiple kashas on Rashi. Amongst them is who said that he's paskening the Loik Abashol. Maybe he passes like Abashol. In fact, that the cotton cannot be kind of himself. But he still wanted to do this. You know why? Because he wanted to get the Eved. If he would have waited, somebody else could have chapped this Eved first. So Tosfos, how do you see the chalal that this is the loy kabashol? And Tosfos asks other question. Tosfos said, I should have said not to the loika b'shol. It just said it shows that he passed like the Rabbana. When do you ever pass not like somebody? Normally, you're passing like somebody. So therefore, Rabbeinu Tam doesn't like this kasha, this chat. Other things that he doesn't like is it's mashma that Marzutra doesn't pass like Abishol. The problem is we know that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi passed like Abishol. In fact, we pass like Abishol. So why would Marzutra say not like that? Because of that, Tosfos actually learns this whole sugya is exactly the opposite. He actually says that it's not the loik Abishol, it is ki Abishol. And Tosfos says as follows, and I'm going to read it inside from the Tosfos. It's about it's like maybe a 10th line down in the thin lines. Tosfos says, "V'nira l'Rabbeinu Tam, the Garcinon Hacha uchi Abishol." In fact, Marzutra, by doing what he did, was showing that he does agree with Abishol. Kloimer afilu Abishol, even according to Abishol, the Omer Kol Masuk Behen Zocha Behen, that the cotton cannot be kind himself, and whoever would grab the cotton would be kind. Hutzrich Lasis came. Marzutra needed to do this, Shalo Yikad Menu Acher, so that no one else should grab it. And that's why Tosfos changes the Gersa. Tosfos has other pshatim as well, but that's the first shot that Tosfos shares. Okay, let's see the Gemara Vayter. The koine is asmai b'kesef. This is a little bit of a complex Gemara, so we have to halt come. The Eved can be koine himself with kesef, and if we go back to the Mishnah on, I believe Chaf Hamad Beis or Chaf Aleph Hamad Beis, it said, we know it might be Chaf Beis Hamad Beis. I just don't have a Gemara with me here. I'm working off the computer. The Mishnah says, "The Eved koine atzmai b'kesef al yidei Cherim ubishtar al yidei atzmai divrei Rab Meir." So we want to analyze what exactly is it that Rab Meir says. Now, there's a couple of different problems involved in an Eved being koine himself back. So I'm going to point out two potential problems. Problem number one, if the Eved is paid himself kesef, the question is, how does an Eved acquire kesef? There is a rule, Masha Kana Eved, Kana Baila. The Eved has no yad without his adon. So how did the Eved get a hold of cash? Now, there are those who hold that the adon, that a third party can give the Eved cash, almanas, that the adon doesn't get a share in it. But that's not a unanimous pshat. So if you hold that no matter what, whatever you give an Eved, it automatically belongs to adon, kesef al yidei atzmai would simply be impossible to achieve. Let's look at shtar. Shtar, how is an Eved able to be koine shtar? If you have a halach of mashakana, Eved kana rabbi, so when the Eved's giving this, when the adon is giving the shtar, cheres, to the Eved, he's putting it into his own hand. The Eved has to be able to be koine out of the rishus adon, and thereby becoming free. Now, there is a chiddush of gitoi v'yadi b'am ka'achas that we have. If you hold of the chiddush of gitoi v'yadi b'am ka'achas, sure, an Eved could be makabel his own star shikhr. But if you don't hold of gitoi v'yadi b'am ka'achas, how in the world does a star shikhr work? By the Eved being koine the star, it would have to be a third party, and these are the factors that we're going to be discussing today. So let's see what it says here in the Gemara. The kesef,
isn't it the same thing like you get?
Yeah.
A get is also mashkun.
Right? The Gemara does use of Gitei V'Yadi Bam Kachas for a get as well, but not everybody holds that. And we'll see later in the Gemara how it would be possible to make a distinction between get and between the get of a woman versus the get shikhr of an Eved. So we'll see that nuance later. So Zot Gemara b'kesav al yidei acherim in avoloy al yidei atzma. The pashtus of how we understood the Mishnah when we read Reb Meir Shita is kesef to work for an Eved if somebody else gives the kesef to the adon. But al yidei atzma, if he wants to give his own kesef, it doesn't work because he doesn't have any money. But my asking, so let's think about this for a minute. Are we discussing a case where the Eved Kenaini does not want to go free, and he's being freed against his will or being redeemed against his will? Mifti. Let's see if that makes sense. Shemani Rav Meir, we know Rav Meir holds elsewhere, the Omar Choyf Hula Eved, Sheyetzi Mitach Rabbi Lecheres. It's not good for an Eved Kanani to go free. It's bad for an Eved Kanani to go free. Why? Because let's say he was the Eved Kanani of a Kohen. He was able to eat Truma. Now, once free, he will no longer be able to eat Truma. And what number two is, a Goy, an Eved Kanani likes the preachers of being a Goy. Once he's freed, he's a regular Yid. He can no longer have relations with a Shivka. So an Eved Kanani does not want to go free. And therefore, V'tanina we learn, Zachin la'adam shaloi b'fanav, ein chavan lo el b'fanav. You can't, on behalf of somebody else, against his will, do something for him. So how could you be paid to him with kesef if he doesn't want it? You're being paid to him with kesef on his behalf. In fact, he doesn't want it at all. So it wouldn't be able to possibly work. Therefore, Zakta Gemara, according to Rav Meir, the only way for kesef al yidei acherim to work, if somebody else could redeem him, it must be if he wants it. If he wants it, then it's zachinatcha. And therefore, what will be the chiddush of Rav Meir in our Mishnah when he said the kesef al yidei acherim? The chiddush is al yidei acherim in al yidei atzmai. The chiddush is if it's midaito, it's pashut. Why wouldn't it work? The whole chiddush of al yidei acherim is that al yidei atzmai he wouldn't be able to be paid himself. Why wouldn't he be able to be paid himself? Alma and kinyan la'eved v'loy rab. So the chiddush of Rav Meir in our Mishnah is that ein kinyan la'eved v'loy rab. The eved cannot be paid himself, but a third party could be paid to him, provided that the eved himself wants that to occur. If that's how you're going to understand, the first clause that Rav Meir said, and that was B'kesef al yidei acherim, ema sefer. Let's look at the second clause of what Rav Meir said, B'shtar al yidei atzma. So what does al yidei atzma mean? It would be al yidei atzmayin, al yidei acherim loy. So kesef would be al yidei acherim, and shtar will say will only be al yidei atzma. Let's say that's what Rav Meir meant. B'shtar al yidei atzmai, al yidei atzmayin, al yidei acherim. Fracting Gemara, the imidaitoi. We're speaking in a case as established by the Reisha that the Eved wants to be freed. If the Eved wants to be freed, why is it that only the Eved can receive the Shtar Shechur? Why can't a third party receive that Shtar Shechur as well? It's to the benefit of the Eved. That's what we established is what Rav Meir is talking about. If you want to say that when Rav Meir said Shtar Yidei Atzmai, it means Af Yidei Atzmai, because Kesef only worked Al Yidei Acherim, but Shtar works Sai Al Yidei Acherim and Sai Al Yidei Atzmai. The Hakamash Malona, what's the chiddush of the fact that Shtar works Al Yidei Atzmai? The chiddush is the Gitoi V'Yodei Boim Kech. The problem is you cannot learn Pshat in Rav Meir like that because we have a brisa that makes it quite clear that that is not Pshat in Rav Meir. We have a brisa that tells us that that's not, in fact, what Rav Meir holds. We have a brisa that makes it very clear that Rav Meir holds Shtar would not work al yidei acherim. Rav Meir. So now we're sort of stuck because of his halacha, because of Rav Meir's halacha, by Kesef, which only works al yidei acherim, we were forced to say that the case is midaitoi. Because if not, how could a third party on his own come along and be paid to the seven? So once we've established that it has to be midaitoi, then let's look at Shtar. Why wouldn't Shtar work al yidei acherim? And we know for sure Meir holds that Shtar does not work al yidei acherim because we have a brisa that says so very, very beferish. So we're stuck. What is Pshat in Rav Meir? So Abaye.
My question is that this fact that he can't marry a shifter? If he's not getting married, but if he's an Eved Kohen, he can't eat trim, is that such a big chayiv that it will go against an Eved going free?
Yes. If it's bad for the Eved, even though there's some huge milas in going free that are obvious, he's free. Nevertheless, it's considered chayiv because there are aspects of it that he doesn't like. So Amar Abaye, let's change. Let's say it's speaking against the will of the Eved. So if it's against the will of the Eved, how could Kesef work like that? How could a third party come and be pointed with Kesef? This Eved, it's a choy for the Eved. The Eved doesn't want it. How could he do it? Zokt Gemara, very simple. The shiny Kesef, hoil the kanili balkorche, makli balkorche. Let me ask you a question. This third party who is redeeming the Eved, what if he merely was purchasing the Eved? He'd be able to buy the Eved, whether the Eved liked it or not. Too bad for the Eved. Who's asking the Eved's opinion? The Eved's a piece of property that the third party can easily buy from the other. So if he buys it from the other and he's keeping it, or if he's buying from the other and he's freeing it, he doesn't need the agreement of the other, of the Eved, because the Eved is not as a non-party to this transaction. This is happening above the head of the Eved. It's merely purchasing the rights of an Eved from its Adon and freeing it. So therefore, Kesef works even against the will of the Eved, because we don't need any type of help from the Eved. We don't need the Eved's involvement in this transaction at all. So therefore, Kesef works like De'acherim, even if it's against the will of the Eved. Frek the Gemara, Ihachi Star Nami. So why doesn't Star also work like De'acherim? The same way, this is above the head of the Eved, and we don't care what the Eved says. This is a transaction between the Adon and the purchaser. Why wouldn't Star work the same way? Zokt Gemara, I'll tell you why. Because high star l'chud, high star l'chud. The star of a purchase would be the Adon being makne, the Eved, to a third party. That's a star. Harei avdi knuyaloch. That's not what the Star Shichar says. The Star Shichar says that you are free. It's a completely different type of star. So you can't bring your raya from a purchase that a Star Shichar would work. It's a completely different type of transaction. But when it's a child of Kesef, it's the same transaction. I'm paying the Adon to release his grip on it, but instead of me taking it for myself, I let him go free. Therefore, that would work Balkorche Eved, but Star would not work Balkorche Eved, and therefore Star would not work Al Yidei Acherim, but it would work Al Yidei Atzma. Correct, Gemara, why don't you say Hachanami Haikas B'Lechud V'Haikas B'Lechud? When I'm buying it, I'm asking the elder to be makna to me. When I'm giving him the cash to redeem him, it's a different purpose. Zok Gemara, we had this earlier. Tiva Mia Chatu. Sure, there might be a different purpose in the transaction, but either way, I'm giving currency. It's the same item. Rabba says there's another reason why Kesef will work without the Eved, because Kesef Kabbalas Rabbi formula. What causes the freedom? The fact that the Adon is accepting Kesef and releasing his rights to the Eved. So again, there's no Eved involvement here. I'm giving the Adon money as the person who's purchasing the Eved, and then the Adon is giving him up. But never was there any involvement of the Eved. Star Kabbalas Acherem Gurm. Star, what causes the kinyan, what causes the freedom? It's the fact that the other person is being the Kabbalit, and therefore there's going to be a difference there as well. Beautiful. Let's see Rashi. Let me just see Rashi because Rashi says it so beautifully. Kesef Kabbalas Rabbi, Shemekabel Rabbi Kesef. Since the Adon is Mekabel to Kesef, Gor Maloi Lishtachar Me'elov. That causes the Eved to go free. This third party who's redeeming the Eved are not hurting the Eved. What is hurting the Eved? Ela Kabbalas Harav. The Kabbalah of the Adon is causing the Eved to go free. The Harav ein nasa shluchai. The Adon is not a shlich of the Eved. The Adon is just freeing him by receiving the Kesef, and there's no involvement of the Eved. No one's representing the Eved here in this transaction. The Adon is doing it on his own behalf. But when an Adon is giving the Eved a Shtar Shichar, you need the fact that someone was Makabalit. So if I'm being Makabalit for the Eved, I have to be in the place of the Eved. Since it's not a good thing for the Eved does not want this, can't do a chayv to a person against his will. What are you saying?
by such a transaction that somebody is freeing the Avid or whatever, buying the Avid, there's no receipt, there's no shoyvet, there's no chosim. Something is going on. There's not only the Kabbalist kesef from the rabbi that's doing the whole thing, right?
The Gemara says otherwise. The Gemara says kesef Kabbalist Rabbi Garmala. You might write a receipt, but that's not affecting the chalois. That's just a record of the transaction. But the Gemara says the whole thing that impacts the transaction is the fact that the Adon is accepting money. And there's no involvement of the Eved here at all. Okay, so let's see now the second half. So now we sort of got Klor shot in Reb Meir. Reb Meir holds that Kesef works like Decher Bal Korchoi, because Kesef is special. It works Bal Korchoi because how it works, it doesn't require involvement of the Eved. And Shtar is exactly the opposite. It only works like Atzmai and not like Decher, again, Bal Korchoi, if the Eved doesn't work. Revolting. And how does it work? Atzmai, when the Eved is receiving the get, Gitay B'Yadai going Kachas. Now we have the second half of our Mishnah, the Chachamim Shita. The Chachamim said exactly the opposite of Reb Meir. He said the Kesef Ayidei Atzmai Uvishtar Ayidei Acher. So let's see if we can understand what the Chachamim said. Zokt Gemara, the Kesef Ayidei Atzmai in Ayidei Acherim. Kesef is exactly the opposite of what Reb Meir said. Kesef, the Eved could be the Eved can give Kesef to an Odin to redeem himself with, but he would not be able to go free if a third party gave that money. Why is that? Even though we've established that the Mishnah is talking about a case where this is occurring against the will of the Eved, Michti, let's think about this a little bit. We heard that the Rabbanan argue in the Beir, and they say, the Rabbanan argue in the Beir, and they hold that it's an absolute schus, no matter whether or not the Eved wants or not, it's an absolute schus for an Eved to go free. Vitanina, and we learned, so therefore, how could the Rabbanan say that Kesef does not work al yidei acherim? Why shouldn't it work al yidei acherim? Even if it's working with shlichus, even if you don't like a mayor, that the kesef somehow is something that is being done by the Eved, it doesn't really matter. It's good for the Eved, so it should work. So why do Chachamim hold that kesef al yidei acherim don't work? And if you're going to say that, of course it works al yidei acherim, even against the will of the Eved, but my al yidei atzmai, af al yidei atzmai. Maybe what the Chachamim are saying is not they're arguing on a mayor that al yidei acherim doesn't work. It does. But what the Chachamim are saying is that kesef will even work if the Eved does it himself. The Kamash Malon, and what is the Kiddush of the Rabbanim arguing on a mayor? Yesh kinyan la'eved b'lei rabbi. Maybe that's the whole point that the Chachamim are making. Your mayor said, Ein kinyan la'eved b'lei rabbi, and therefore an Eved cannot have kesef to be paid himself. Well, I hold yesh kinyan la'eved b'lei rabbi, and therefore the Eved would be able to be paid himself with kesef. But Avada, a third party, can do it as well. Zok the Gemara, that cannot be shot in the Rabbanim. Why? Because let's look at the second clause that the Rabbanim told us. Bishtar al yidei acherim v'lo al yidei atzmai. Now, if the Chum are saying that by kesef it's sai al yidei atzmai, sai al yidei acherim, so when the Chachamim say that shtar has to be al yidei acherim, it must be only al yidei acherim, not al yidei atzmai, because otherwise it's exactly the same thing as kesef. So Zog to Gemara, the problem is v'chiteim my al yidei acherim, af al yidei acherim, and by I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. I apologize. If you're going to say that by kesef, it's both al yidei atzmai and al yidei acherim. By shtar it's daf al yidei acherim and not al yidei atzmai. Why not? We have a rule that's accepted by everybody. It's accepted by everybody, this rule of Gita V'Yodi Bam Kech. So how would we want to argue that the Chacham would disagree with this, since it's accepted and developed? This concept of Gita V'Yodi Bam Kech, we would want to, of course, say that it stems with the Rabbana. So if that's the case, why by Shtar it's Dafka Yidei Cherem and not Ayidei Atzma? And if you're going to tell me that when the Rabbanan said that Shtar is Ayidei Cherem, it means Af Ayidei Cherem, which means that now the halacha is the same by Kesef and by Shtar. They both work Sai Ayidei Atzmai and Sai Ayidei Cherem. What would be the Chiddush? What would be the Chiddush that Shtar works Ayidei Cherem? That it's a schus for an eved to go l'cheres, and that's why Shtar works Ayidei Atzmai. If that was the case, if that's what the Chacham meant to say, that both Shtar and Kesef work, Bein Ayidei Atzmai, Bein Ayidei Cherem, Ihachi Nervinu V'Nisninu. Then the way the Rabbanan should have expressed this halacha was not give an impression that Kesef has one halacha and Shtar has a different halacha. Rather, it should have said the Kesef u'v'Shtar Bein Ayidei Cherem, Bein Ayidei Atzmai. That would have been the clearest way to express that halacha, and that's not what they did. So there must be a distinction in halacha between Kesef and Shtar. So we'll be forced to say, Ela beKesef, Bein Ayidei Cherem, Bein Ayidei Atzmai. By Kesef, he disagrees with the Meir that the Meir holds Dafka Ayidei Cherem, and the Rabbanon say Sai Ayidei Cherem, Sai Ayidei Atzmai. Why? Because he holds Yesh Kinyan Leved V'Lei Rabbi. And by Shtar, it's Dafka Ayidei Cherem, V'Lei Ayidei Atzmai. And by Shtar, it's Dafka Ayidei Cherem and not Ayidei Atzmai. And why? Why wouldn't it be Ayidei Atzmai? Obviously, because the Chachamim dispute this concept of Gitei V'Yodi B'Im Kachas. But we don't want to say that the Chachamim dispute Gitei V'Yodi B'Im Kachas, because that's the accepted psak. So therefore, you know what we're going to do? We're going to blame this on Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Reb Shimon ben Elazar is the Shittas Yochid who does not hold of Gitei V'Yodi B'Im Kachas. The Tanya Reb Shimon ben Elazar Aimer Af B'Shtar Ayidei Cherem V'Lo Ayidei Atzmai, and therefore B'Shalosh Machloikos B'Dofa. There's a three-way machlokes. So let's go back to the Mishnah itself, and let's read the Mishnah. And although at first glance the Mishnah seems like it's only presenting the Shita of Reb Meir and the Rabbanon, in fact, the Gemara is telling us here that the Mishnah is presenting us the Shita of the Rabbanon, of Reb Meir, and of Reb Shimon ben Elazar. And let's go back to the Mishnah. So I believe it's on Daf Chav Beis, Amud Beis. I hope that's what it is.
Shimon ben Elazar, how does any get work?
We're going to see. Well, a get could work all your day a shliach. That's not a problem. It works for a shliach.
Yeah, but it doesn't say in Pusik like that.
Yeah, it would work for a shliach. So let's see the Mishnah. Evet Kanani, Nikla Bekesef, Ubishtar Bechazaka, the Koines Atzmai, the Kesef al Yidei Cherem, Ubishtar al Yidei Atzmai, Divrei Reb Meir. And what are we saying the case is? It's speaking Shalom Midaitoi, and Kesef works al Yidei Cherem, even Shalom Midaitoi, like the Gemara taught us that Kesef doesn't need the involvement of it. Ubishtar al Yidei Atzmai, Shtar it works, Sai al Yidei Atzmai, and Sai al Yidei Cherem. That's how the Gemara Shtar. The Shtar works al Yidei Atzmai because Gitei V'Yodai Boim Kafas. Divrei Reb Meir. The Chachamim Oimrim the Kesef al Yidei Atzmai. Period. The Chachamim only argue by Kesef, and they say Kesef works al Yidei Atzmai as well as al Yidei Acherem. Al Yidei Atzmai it works because Yesh Kinyan La'eved B'Lei Rabbi. Al Yidei Acherem it works because he holds it's a schus, not a chayiv, the Chachamim, and therefore someone else could do it for him. But by Shtar, the Chachamim holds as well that it works Bein al Yidei Atzmai, Bein al Yidei Acherem, because the Chachamim do hold of Gitoi V'Yodei B'Im Kafas. Period. Now this last line of Shtar al Yidei Acherem, that's not the Chachamim anymore. That's the Shita of Reb Shimon ben Elazar, of Shtar al Yidei Acherem. Only Reb Shimon ben Elazar holds Shtar al Yidei Acherem because Reb Shimon ben Elazar is the only individual who disagrees with the concept of Gitoi V'Yodei B'Im Kafas. Now it works out beautiful because we're still able to say that it's the Chachamim who also agree to the halacha of Gitai Yodai Bayim Kafis. Well, so now let's go back to our Gemara. So I'm going to switch the blot again to Taf Chav Gimel Amar Aleph.
So it's going to be like the Chacham Oimrim B'Kesel Al Dei Atzmai is the only thing that they're mechilik with Reb Meir.
Reb Meir is that Kesef works like the Atzmai, but they're moided to Reb Meir that stars Ben Ay the Atzmai, Ben Ay the Cherem. It's exactly correct. Amar Rabba, Zokt Rabba, my time of the Reb Shimon ben Elazar. What is the reason for Reb Shimon ben Elazar? Gomar lo lo ma'isha. He must learn lo lo from Isha. And what does he learn from Isha? Ma Isha tziyoytzi get l'shush shein shaloi. The get Isha does not work until the get is out of the rishus of the husband, right? She has to be koined, and therefore has to leave the rishus of her husband. That's how it works. So af evid nami, if we learn lo lo from Isha that a shtar shichra works, it would have the same requirements. Tziyoytzi get l'shush shein shaloi. The get has to leave the rishus of the other, and by the evid holding the get, it doesn't accomplish that. And that's why Shimon ben Elazar holds that a evid cannot use get ideats. However, perfect, that's what he holds. Boy Rab. So Rabba has a shaila. So before I do Boy Rabba, Rashi says an important halacha. The Rabbanan holds Gita v'yadi b'am ka'achas. So you obviously don't learn law from Isha that it has to go to Shoshen and Shaloi. So if you look at the last line of the Amid in Rashi, Shein Shaloi, Shal Rabbi. For Rabbanon Gamri Hachi, where the Rabbanon have a different understanding of what we learn from Get Isha. Ma Isha Mekabel Askita of Evet Mekabel Get. Just like a woman could be Mekabel her own get, so too an Evet could be Mekabel his own get. How does it work? Obviously it works from Gitai v'Yadai Ba'im Kachas. Boy Rabba. Rabba has a shaila according to Reb Shimon ben Elazar. And let's turn over onto Daf Yud Gimel, Chaf Gimel, Amud Beis. Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Evet Kanaini, Mao Shiyasa Shliach LeKabel Gitim Yad Rabba. We know an Evet Kanaini cannot be kind of his own get because it has to leave the rishus of the Adain, and it doesn't when the Evet gets it. But could the Evet Kanaini ask a third party, Reuven, can you please accept the get shichur from my Adain on my behalf? That technically should work because it's going to Shoshen Shalai. Do you say Kiva the Gomer Lola Isha? Since you're learning Lola from Isha, therefore Ki Isha, maybe it should be no different than a Isha, and it should work because the Shlicha should work. Just like Shlichus works to be Makabal a get, so too the Shlicha should work to be Makabal the Shtar Shichur. Idilma, Isha is different. The E Motzi Makabelas Gita, since she herself has the ability to be Makabal her own get, she could make a shlich to do what she herself can accomplish. Shlich nami Motzi Mashvi Eved, Motzi Mashvi Kama. She can also make a shlich. But an Eved, the E Loi Makabal Gite, an Eved who cannot be Makabal his own get, maybe shlich nami Loi Motzi Mashvi. Since he can't do it himself, he cannot make a shlich to do something for him that he wouldn't be able to do by himself. Basar the boy, after Rabbi had this shaila, other pashta, he was able to be pasha the shaila. And the pashta was law may isha ki isha, and of course it would work. It would work. Zok to Gemara. So now you're telling me a huge bomb shel chiddush. You're telling me that in order for me to make a shliach, I don't have to be able to do the action myself. I can appoint a third party to do shlichus for me, even though I myself couldn't do that. That's a massive chiddush, which will cause us a problem elsewhere in Shas. The Gemara had a shayla. Kohanim who do avoid on behalf of the Yid, we cannot do avoid. The Kohanim do the avoid on our behalf. Who are they working for? Are they our shluchim, or are they the shluchim of the Rebbeinu Shalom? They're working directly from the Rebbeinu Shalom. So Rav Huna Rebbe B'Shua said they must be working for the Rebbeinu Shalom. They can't possibly be working for us. Because if they're working for us, they can't be our shliach. Because mi kamidi the anan loy matzina avdina the inu motzi avdi. Is it possible that they can do something for us, which are do the avoida on our behalf, if we ourselves can't do the avoida? So from there, Rav Huna Rebbe B'Shua concluded that in fact they're shluchah der achman. The problem is his whole concept, his whole prerequisite is wrong, because we just showed you that you don't have to be able to do the action yourself, The Eved does not have to be able to be Makabal, his own get Shechur, yet a third party can do it for him. So that disproves the whole basis of Rabbi Huna Bereda B'Shu's Psak. V'loi, for Avda, our case here, the Iu Loi Motzi Makabal Gite, he would not be able to be Makabal his own get, yet Ushliach Motzi Mashve, as we're saying over here. But V'loi, that's not a kash at all. Yisrael Loi Shaychi B'Teres Karbonis Klau. Yisrael has no shaykhis whatsoever to Karbonis. He's totally not a korban person at all. Therefore, he won't be able to give a shlichus to a kohen to do avodah for him. But Eved Shaykh begin. Of course, an Eved has connection to Gittin. The Tanya we learned in a brisa, near Madvorim, Sho Eved Mekabel Gito Shal Chaveiroi, Miad Rabbi Shal Chaveiroi. Even an Eved himself can sometimes be Mekabel a get on behalf of a third party. For instance, let's say he's an Eved and he has a friend who's an Eved. He's an Eved who works for Ruvain, and this friend is an Eved who works for Shimon. He could be Makabel a get on behalf of his friend Eved from Shimon, because at the end of the day, even though whatever he's kind of belongs to Ruvain, but that's not the point. The point is once it leaves the Rishus of Shimon, once the get Shechur leaves the Rishus of Shimon, Shimon's Eved would go free. So you see there's certain cases where an Eved could be Makabel a get Shechur. It's when he's being Makabel it on behalf of a different Eved that works for a different Adai. But of course, if Reuven owned two Avadim and Reuven wanted a free Eved A, he couldn't give Eved B to get Shechur, because by giving it Eved B, he hasn't left the Rishos of Reuven. But I'll call upon him, you see that an Eved could be Makabel again. Once you see somewhere, someplace, that an Eved could be Makabel again, it's very logical that he could now make a Shliach. But Karbanis, you don't find anywhere where Yisro, a Zohar, is going to be able to bring a carbon. Therefore, you have a Rai, in fact, that Kohanim are Shluchei Derechman. About it. If you hold like the Chachamim, that Yesh Kinyan Levi B'lei Rabbi, of course, the source of the kesef had to have been from a third party, and you have to give it to the Eved Almanas, that the Rav has no rishus. So let's see the Gemara. The Gemara delves down into this. Name of Let's say that this is the machlokes between Reb Meir and the Chachamim. Reb Meir savar ein Kinyan Levi B'lei Rabbi, ve'ein Kinyan Leisha B'lei Baila, and therefore, kesef would not work because the Eved cannot possibly own any kesef. The Gemara is lumping Isha together with Eved because the Gemara holds they have the same status. The Rabbanan Safri, the Rabbanan hold, Yesh Kinyan Eved B'lei Rabbi, and the Eved could have a Kinyan that the Adon is excluded from, and therefore it would work. And the Yesh Kinyan Isha B'lei Baila, and therefore she can own kesef. Amar Rabba, Amar Rab Sheshet, the Chula Alma ain't Kinyan Eved B'lei Rabbi. Let's say everybody agrees that whatever an Eved picks up automatically belongs to the Adon. And once again, whatever the woman picks up is her husband's automatic. We're talking about a third party who gave a mana. So I misspoke earlier. Up until now, we thought it's tamazoi. If an Eved picks up something, does he get to keep it or not? And that was the machlokes. So no, everybody agrees if an Eved gets something, it automatically belongs to the Adon. But here it's speaking where there was a Tanai placed into the transaction of giving something to the Eved. Here we have a special type of gift that was received by the Eved. It was a gift that came with a Tanai that the Adon shouldn't have any connection to this object, to this item. And that's where it works. So Reb Meir Savar Ki Amar Kni, as soon as the gifter gave the gift to the Eved and said, Kni, I want you to be kaina, kani. Right away, what's going to happen? Kani Eved, kani Rabbi. Instantaneously, he said, Kniza, instantaneously it's going to go straight to the Adon. And when he says Almanas, it has zero impact. It doesn't matter. His Tanai is useless. The object will be picked up by the Eved and it will go directly to the Adon. Rabbanan Savri, even the Amalei Almanas, since the giver said Almanas, Ahani Leitnoi, the Tanai actually works that it will not allow the Eved, the Adon, to take over. And Rashi says, how does it work? Ahani Leitno, the Meikara, the Tanai that he made originally, Adaita the Tno, the Meikara, Adaita Tno Akne, person giving the gift only gifted it all that pnai, and therefore it would not go to the Adon. The Adon wouldn't get his grasp on it, and now you have a hechetimse that an Eved has kesef that the Adon doesn't have, and he can redeem himself. For Rabbi Elazar disagrees with Rab Shesh's perspective. He said, "Kol ki agavna d'chul amaloi pligi the kanyev the kanirab." Even if the giver said almanah shein l'rabach l'shushbeit, it has no impact. Automatically, the gift will go to the Adon. So where do you have a hechetimse, according to the Chachamim, that the Eved can own cash without the Adon having a grasp in it? Where he said, where the giver said something more drastic. He said, this money is gifted to you, but you don't own it. So since you don't own it, it's only gifted to you without you owning it, then it's protecting the ownership of the Adon from setting in, because I'm not really giving it to you. I'm only giving it to you that it should be chayers. There it will work, because if we're not giving this to the Eved completely, that it should be his, we're only giving it to him for one specific purpose, that would be enough to prevent the Adon's grasp from grabbing it. Rav Meir Savar ki amaloi kni, it's kni, Eved, but kni rabbi, it still doesn't help. It doesn't mean anything. Rabban Savar, nami haloi kani maknele. Since he said it's only almanas that you're going to go to cheres with it, the giver is not even completely giving this money to the Eved at all. Because he said, I'm only giving it to you, which basically says, I'm not giving it to you. You don't have it enough that your Adon can get it. The level in which I'm giving it to you is too subtle. It's only for the purposes of redemption for the Adon to get a grasp in it. And that's how it works. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we were able to finish Daf Chav Gimel. B'ezras Hashem tomorrow, bright and early, we will continue the sugya and learn Daf Chav Dalet.
Why does he have
to? Thank you for coming. I dragged myself out of bed. I'm really happy the Olam showed up today.
When Yosy?
Yes.
So the only way that it can be al day atzmoi is when he gets it like a touch of the money. Only almanas, so it's not really al day atzmoi. This is al day chayim, no?
Well, you're having a good point. It's almost like the giver is sort of giving it directly to the Adon. That's what you're pointing out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a shtickle like that. That's correct. And there's an important toisvis to learn. It's a long toisvis, and he talks about how that works with an isha as well. There's a lot going on here behind the scenes. But I think that's how I understood it as well. It's almost like a way to make it look like the Eved's being paid himself, but really the gifter has his hands there. He's running the puppet. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Oh, good morning, David. How you doing?
Good morning, Mazel Tov.
Baruch Tia, thank you very much.
It's the closest I can get to you after the wedding.
Did you see my habitat over here?
You're not coming back, you and Rabbi Lowy.
Well, eventually my host will throw me out.
All right, enjoy. Mazel Tov. Take care.
Have a wonderful day. Betsy as well.
Okay, bye.